Working alone, let me tell you something, you could hurt yourself a lot of times. So you got to be very careful when you move it. You could move it and not get hurt, so. Looking like a piece now, doesn't it? It's a unique style of piece. Typically, on a traditional sofa, say like that one over there, for instance, there in my showroom. That one is it's fully upholstered, and it has a stretcher that goes through, and you wouldn't see this. I mean, there's no panels like this. This is just very typical of this type of antique piece of furniture. We're going to put some buttons in now. 6, 7. What we're doing right here is we're going to figure out the button placement here, and we're just recapping it. It was quite some time ago that we worked on these backs. 28 buttons. We're cutting strips here, and what we're going to do is we're going to double them up, and then we're going to cut them 2 at a time. It saves time, and the scissors has no problem cutting through multiple layers of fabric like this. So 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10, and so on. And then we just when you got to make a substantial amount of buttons, you got to be like a machine, and that's what's going to get this project done faster. So this is what we're doing, and if you can find a piece of scrap that we cut on the bottom of something away, they're trimming it. There's always going to be pieces of salvage like this, you know. And some people say, "Oh my goodness, you're wasting material when you cut it." You got to have something to work with. You can't just have something cut, you know, right to size and put it on. It doesn't work like that. There's an acceptable amount of waste when working on a project, any sort of project. You got to have something to pull on, you know, and to work, because it just can't be done any other way. So what we have is these pieces that fell to the floor, and we pick them up and we're going to reuse them. Why cut off the fabric like that, the bolt of it and stuff? If you could save a little bit and, you know, perhaps have a little bit left over, and or what if you make the potential mistake that everybody is being a human being? It can happen, but in TV land over here, there's no mistakes. So we're taking the buttons here, I'm cutting around it, getting it ready. We take the die and we cut around the die. Now, if you've ever made buttons before, there's a cutter that they have that you can use that'll cut a perfect circle for this. But I found it to be too difficult sometimes for it to work properly. It doesn't quite work out as good as you'd expect. It's too small sometimes, and if it's just off center a minute amount in there, the button will not come out properly, and you will have wasted the shell. By cutting it around like this, it does the best job in doing it, and it's fast, and allows extra material to be tucked inside the button, and so you're less apt to make a bad button. Doing, let's finish one here. You take this, you take a shell, take a piece of fabric, and this here is the face that's going to be outside. It goes in here like this. This is the part we see on the outside, but it's going to have fabric wrapped around it. Push it in, stuff it in there, put it in here. 1, 2. You can see that is nice and tight, and you can test them by doing this. That's really in there good. So you see buttons falling apart. If you have a little piece, the twine will break or it'll separate. It can happen. If you're doing leather or vinyl, you got to be very careful, because it'll just cut it making it, but you gotta have the touch for it. From what I remember as a kid, they haven't changed. You can buy a brand new button machine like that. That particular button machine is I got when I opened my business 25 years ago. You know, if you look at some of the button machines from 100 years ago, it's going to be the same looking thing. Osborne tool. They make a lot of upholstery tools, but I think even they make tools for other trades too. I think even auto body, I think I've seen them make.
After a while, you can almost do it blindfolded. I probably millions of buttons I've made. Seriously, millions. Making buttons through the 1970s with my father with the custom vans when they had the headliners on the inside. It'd be all tufted, you know. Make 500 buttons, I mean, out of vinyl. I remember one time when I was a little kid, I'd be running away. I didn't want to do it anymore.
But to make like 500 buttons when you're a kid, it is like the living hell, you know, to do that. But it has to be done. And if somebody thinks that making buttons is somehow beneath them, it's an absolutely essential task that has to be done. It has to be done correctly.
You know, this production, if you got to make, you know, 10,000 buttons, I mean, there's companies that just make buttons. If you're a manufacturer, because you don't have, you know, people to make them. You could if you were a mediocre sized shop. It would be worth it. You just make it yourself. You don't have to deal with anything. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
But we need one piece of twine for each button, and this is special twine. It's made to, it has like almost like an adhesive on it. It's special button twine, but the grippiness of the twine is important because you don't want the button to loosen up.
Cut the ends, and they're all buckled.
You stand all day like I do in one spot, and many times you're not just perfectly upright. You're leaning over a table, and when you're leaning over a table like that, eventually those muscles that hold you upright, I swear they don't even want to shut off. When you sit down, they start to tighten up, and you're more apt to be comfortable standing up. And some people, they sit down a lot. I don't sit down a lot. I stand up a lot.
Who needs yoga?
I said, who needs Yoda? Alrighty. Slide it in, and meet up the other end, the end like that, and you're ready to go.
That's what we're doing here. So we're trying to get it set up so that we can do it effectively and efficiently. And these are little steps when you're doing this type of work that could make in a span of a day, could add up to a couple extra hours of work on other areas that will get this job done more economically and more profitability.
You go to Italy now, and there's not really many upholstery shops over there that I've seen. Rome and everywhere. You'll find them here and there. But you won't, they're not like every corner. It costs a lot of money. You think things are expensive over here. Over there, it's very expensive. So good enough here to start. What we're going to try to do here is we want to pick a line where these top rows are going to stay in the pattern. So it'll be a highly probable that will a better result. Remember that we tried to correct the best we could when we were working on the backs at one time, trying to re-drill some of the holes because they were so sloppy putting these buttons in. It was terrible. We got some, but we can kind of go and move it a little bit. Yeah, pulling through at the same time. Lead up with the lines. This can be permanent. You can staple this right in. As long as it looks okay from where it is here, it'll be fine. Now these other ones, we might have to play with the buttons to get them to match up. That goes, the needle will be just the same. So we don't have to tie off the buttons. But it's kind of like when you're going to go through the old holes that say somebody drilled, it's like a forensic person. Imagine you find a dead person and you just find a skull. And then people will go and they'll put layers of clay and make it. Damn. That hurt. But it's hard because everything's slippery. I'm just going to pull it. You can see here, it's kind of getting snug. I was saying about forensic, I mean, this is kind of like the way that he or she wanted to do it. That looks good. Okay, you're only going to pull it so much. So you're going to take that like that. You're going to go this way, and then one that way. And that's what you're going to do. You pull on it, pretty standard. A couple staples that way, back and forth.
When you deal with it every day, you can feel. This is only what we have, like 1-inch foam, I think was what we used on the back here. 1 or 1.5, something like that, with the polyester. And it gets to a point, you pull it, and you're not going to. It's not going to go any further. That the foam's collapsing to just about nothing, right to the board, so you can feel that. And you don't have to. But if you're dealing with a back that has springs or anything like that, or a larger amount of material, I can pull on it and be pretty close with it too. I can judge the tension, but you'll find that even those instances, you're going to go back and you're going to have to make adjustments, release it, pull it extra tight, and so on. But that looks very nice, though. It almost looks like a little tombstone, I think, though, when I look at that, though. But you know, but it looks very nice, though.
So we got it pulled in equally on each side. Trim it so it's not in the way. And we're going to pop it in, and that'll be a rep. This one's going to stay. And we're going to get the other ones to try to look symmetrical with one another. It'd be like a mirror image of the other. And this is always the easiest thing to do. That one, and that looks good. So basically two now. Now that we got those in there, now we can kind of go, because that's the problem where we were going to have, was trying to figure out which line. When we put these together in the back, and the way they're fitted, they could be dropping a little bit, and we pick up another line, something different. We can kind of go across now. We're going to draw some lines. Better now. Pull these snug so we can kind of see where we. That's not bad. We'll leave those for now. If we don't like the way one looks, we can try to make this one look like that one. But if we can't, we're limited by the button, the holes, the old holes, we can manipulate that one so that they both look together. My job is time consuming. That's the thing, you know, when you can still work and talk as long as you know, when you're working with people in the shop and you're working and stuff, you want to have. You work by yourself. I work by myself most of the time. But I have visitors and stuff, and it makes them feel comfortable too that they're coming by and I'm able to work through it, you know, that they're not hindering me too much. But you like company. If you're happy, you do better work, and you can do it for longer periods of time without getting burned out. Because when you have a good conversation going on, it's not really so much work.
We're We're trying to make everything a mirror image because these backs are different and the heights of them are a little different. About an inch, or I think it's about an inch. We have to make it like a give and take so that we can get it so that we get the right feeling of it. When we put it in, if we like it, we'll tighten up the buttons and we'll set the depth and it'll be permanent. Okay, that looks pretty good, I think. Yeah, that looks pretty good. It's the way the design was, that these were dropped down. Because reality is this, though, if you had these buttons higher, you say, well, it looks like a big forehead or something. I mean, when you look at things, you matrix things, you see things and stuff. But if you went any higher here, you'd be right up over here. It would not look right, the button on the very, very edge. So they did what they wanted. And they could have done a peak thing or something. But this is kind of like their pattern, but we straightened it out. So the buttons we drilled and moved and stuff that day, so it helped out a lot. So that looks pretty good. So what we're doing right here is cutting the welt on a bias. And we're gonna use this around this whole piece here. It's gonna help hide gaps too, and it looks more finished. So what we're gonna do right now we need welting cord. Now welting cord is generally, there's different types. There's washable stuff, cording, there's plastic, like a foam cording. We use paper in the furniture industry. And so what we do is we cut this on the bias. This is more random. The dots are gonna be in a random type thing. They're not gonna be in the same spots. When you cut on the bias like that, what that does is it allows it to be more flexible. But if you go diagonally, it'll stretch like you won't believe. It's just the way it is. So taking corners and things like that, it's much better. And also, in this case, with the pinpoint design of this, it would not look right if it was cut straight. Here, and we're gonna sew on the sewing machine. Make some piping. Is that Betamax you're shooting in? Get the eye. Get it through the eye, and then now I'm going to load the bobbin. I load it from underneath on this particular machine. Some sewing machines are top load. This is what they call an M bobbin. This is a Consew 206RB3, and I've had it for probably 15 years. I've had it. It's been a great machine. It's never broken. I mean, these sewing machines are pretty amazing. You take care of them, and I tell you, they don't break. They are amazing. I've had a couple other machines too, and they were great. I just got a new one for the hell of it. I didn't even really need it. But they have some features on them and stuff, adjustable stitch size. Also, reverse. You see when I'm going back, I go forward. On the lever that I hit on the side there, and it goes into reverse. And that locks it into place. If you don't do that when you're making the welt, depending on the type of material, it'll pull apart before you get it to the machine to make it. So we got our strips, we're sewing them in place. And you got those those red threads in the back that are just a hook on, and it's hard to sew. It's hard to sew this type of fabric, especially making a cushion. It's very difficult. Sew these together because we're going to make a continuous piece of welt. This is called welt. These little threads, they suck. excess. Too much. You don't need as much material to salvage. You only got need about a half an inch of material beyond when you sew the seam. It's going to be tucked in. It's going to be inside. You don't need all that material. It's just unnecessary. This is what the inside of the piping is. It's just paper. In this case, and the size of the welding cord is, I use a 4/32, but they've got 5/32. It's bigger. This foot is what they call a single welt foot. It's general purpose. Use it for sewing and everything else, but it's built in. It has a groove that the piping goes in there, and it makes it nice and tight. The foot seems to like this. This is a stiff fabric, so you gotta kind of form it to get it in. Otherwise, the foot can go over the top of it. It'll miss it. And your cushions and all that stuff, it's made. I can adjust my stitch up so it goes faster. So we're going to use this welt in a bunch of different places on this piece. We need some for the outside arms, and then we need some for the outside back. So we're getting ready to do that. This is preparation. This is what we're getting ready for the next task that we're doing. You can get pretty quick, but you don't want the machine to go. I mean, you could have it run for a ways like that in making the piping, the cording, the welting. But we don't want the machine to go crazy, work too hard and too fast. So you have the treadle there. In the old days, in the old sewing machines back, I don't know when the sewing machine was invented, what year. It might have been, I think it was sometime in the 1800s. Okay, now we made our welt. We are done for this evening. So I'll be wearing a different shirt, most likely, hopefully. And we'll see you again next time.
That was amazing.
You like that?
I think that people should wear helmets when they drive in their car. If it saves just one life, I think everybody should wear big helmets. Like, big white bulbous helmets going around. I don't care. With seatbelts. What's the difference between a car and a race car? You do 70 miles an hour on the highway. So everybody should wear helmets.
And they push back against that?
That's
oh, well, no, we
stupid.
can't do that.
That's stupid.